Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the PDM splits. Certainly it seems inevitable. There was a lot of talk. Initially also it seemed to be an alliance which was certainly odd in the sense that all the political parties with PPP, PMLN having different stakes in the government. All of that, while it was being talked about 6-month period, of course, we've seen a lot of rallies happening, a lot of talk about these 11 parties coming together against the government, but now it seems to have fizzled out. We saw today also Bilawal Bhutto Zardari come up and say that actually the CAC meeting has been delayed. Now, what happens next in terms of the tussle over the leader of the opposition, both in the Senate and the government? We'll be talking particularly about this. We'll also be talking about, of course, as far as the government is concerned, the opposition at this time is no opposition, effectively. How does this work for politics for the other parties, even if PPP sits out, which now seems to be almost certain? All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Javed Zadoon, who is a political analyst. Thank you so much for being with us today. On Abbas Papi, who is a senator with PTI. Thank you for joining us today. Rana Ehsan Afzal, who is leader PMLN. Thank you for joining us today. Javed Sahab, let's start off with you. How do you see the situation now? Of course, like I said, we have been talking about this for a while. That this was inevitable. A lot of the analysts, a lot of the political, the forecast has been, writing on the wall, so to speak, that this is an alliance which would not rally forth beyond a certain period of time. Even the 6-month period seems to be kind of, a stretched out period for this kind of an alliance. How do you see it?
Thank you very much, Mahrukh. Excuse me. I think we have been talking about the composition of the Pakistan Democratic Movement in these talk shows as well, and why it would fail. And ultimately, I think it ended up the way it should have ended up because of the disparate groups getting together for some very, I think, narrow, I think, kind of political considerations, rather selfish considerations, to form this political alliance or political grouping. On one hand, you see Pakistan People's Party, and then you have Pakistan Muslim League N. The two parties have been kind of foes or political opponents in the past as well, and they have got, I think, a lot of acrimony, a lot of animosity in the past, and the kind of relations they had, I think it was predictable that this alliance is not going to last. On the other hand, you see a religious party, political religious party, Jamiat Ulema-e-Islam. And that particular party didn't have the political stakes as far as the government was concerned or the parliament was concerned. Because the two main opposition parties like PMLN and PPP, they did have stakes in the system because they were represented in the National Assembly and Senate. And Pakistan People's Party also formed government in Sindh. So I think they had great kind of stakes in the political system.
Isn't it as a political move from the PMLN and Maulana Fazlur Rahman to expect the PPP to resign? Doesn't it seem to be something perhaps odd in the sense that nobody would expect them to forego their government in Sindh? Isn't that true?
I think I agree with you, Mahrukh, because as far as Pakistan People's Party is concerned, their politics has been a real politics because they believe that staying with the system is in the best interest of Pakistan People's Party because they have a government in the second largest province of Pakistan. And it was, I think, kind of a naive on part of Pakistan Muslim League N and the Jamiat Ulema Pakistan to expect resignation from Pakistan People's Party, particularly from the provincial government. And I think even at the outset, it was quite clear that PPP would never tender resignations.
And yet we are where,
and yet they ended up asking Pakistan People's Party and going for the showdown as well, which has resulted in the split of PDM.
Right, I will come back to you. I'm going to go to Abbas Papi. Sabji, how do you see the fact that, of course, this at least, to a certain extent leads credence to the government's narrative of saying that it was all about their own interests for these political parties. If we look at, the PMLN, the PPP walking out effectively, gives credence to what the PTI has always been saying. Isn't that true?
Thank you very much for having me over here, Zee.
I'm sorry, I can't seem to hear. Ji, I will go to Rana Ehsan. Ji, Rana Sahab, okay, why has the PMLN, let's talk about the PMLN particularly, Mariam Nawaz, your leadership. Why have you brought the PDM? Okay, I think I'm going to have to. Sahab, I can hear you now.
You have to rephrase the question.
Okay, well, what I want to say is that it seems, Ji, you can hear me now, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So what I'm saying is that in terms of your narrative, in terms of what the government has always been saying that, this is PMLN, PPP, Maulana Fazlur Rahman, this alliance, PDM itself is all about power. It's all about the interests, their own interests being safeguarded under this platform of the PDM. The way the PPP has split up, the way that they've decided not to go forward and resign, that of course has led credence to your narrative, to the government's narrative, to the corruption narrative, to the fact that of course these parties, PPP, PMLN have always been in power, they want to come back to power, all of what the government has been saying already.
I mean, that was not a question, by the way, but I'll still try to answer it, by the way. As I was just saying...
my question, Senator Saab, my question was, do you think so? Yes, that is very much a question.
I agree to it. I agree to it. I mean, whatever they were doing, it was more of a power grab. I mean, it was not an agenda they were doing for this, country at all. I asked few of the senators from the Noon League and the People's Party, who are my colleagues during the Senate elections. I mean, what are you up against? The only agenda we have is to oust the Imran Khan. And you know what? When they were having all those jalsas across the country, from Nashera to Karachi to Gujranwala and Lahore, we can all see the people who turned up to the jalsas was not really, they were not really people. They were all the laborers they had hired to come to the jalsas. So people did not really appreciate what they were up to, and what actually People's Party did to them was, politically very wise move. They played politically. They had Yusuf Gilani in the Senate. They made him an opposition leader. And what Fazlur Rahman and Mariam Bibi got out of it, they are all both sick, resting at home right now, which is very much obvious. And you know what? We always thought that PPP was more of a political party of the Federation, but I think they lost it too. When I was younger, I used to hear that, is Charo Subogi Zanjeer Benazir. They have become a political party of the Sindh as well. Noon League have become a political party of GT Road from Lahore to Jhelum. Maulana Fazlur Rahman is only found in the south of KPK right now. ANP is found in the Madan division of KPK right now. So all these political parties who are working for their own power grabs have reduced themselves to the regional political parties. And Alhamdulillah, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and Prime Minister Imran Khan's government, we proved to be only federal government, a federal political party working for the betterment of the Pakistani people out there. And people have understood it very well, I suppose. And I don't think so, for another couple of years, none of this alliance will work. None of these political parties can work together to oust Imran Khan or any other democratic government in Pakistan, because people will not really buy it anymore further.
Right, okay, let me come back to you. Ji, Rana Saab, I'm sure you heard what On Saab is saying, Senator On is saying about, of course, the government does seem to be breathing a sigh of relief. There is, of course, a lot of confidence we see in the government as far, after this recent rift we've seen in the PDM. Why hold the PPP to this unrealistic standard, so to speak? Do you think that it's politically wise to have expected this and to have this kind of a fallout over this issue?
I think the current argument is not whether we were going to give resignations, whether People's Party was going to be joining the resignation. That part was decided that they're going to take it to the CEC, and the decision, when they bring it, it will be decided what to do. The current argument is about a consensus which was reached at the platform of PDM, which was that, the chairman would be from People's Party, the deputy chairman would be from JUIF, and the opposition leader would be from PMLN. Now, if People's Party was persistent, or they wanted to bring Gilani Saab no matter what, they should have done that through the platform of PDM, rather than taking a solo flight and taking votes from the government allies, the BAP party. So the argument is not on the resignations and the long march. Obviously, that was also an area where we thought that we should go ahead with it. The 9 parties thought that it should happen right now, and People's Party, wanted time to think about it, and we gave them that time. This current issue is on the fact that PDM makes a decision; it should be followed. For example, we thought that we would not want to take part in the by-elections. But People's Party, they made their argument and the PDM agreed, and we went for the by-elections and the Senate elections. So obviously, where the consensus or the majority decision was agreed by all the parties, here even People's Party should have complied. So that is the argument. I would
but
like
Rana
to say
sir,
that,
I'm sure that the PMLN appreciates and realizes that this rift will potentially damage the PDM to the extent where it no longer has any effect on the government. And you started off with saying that you want to bring the Prime Minister down, you want to bring this government down, you want to alleviate the suffering of the people.
well, the targets of the PDM, we will try and strive to achieve them. We will move ahead, and we feel that we're standing at the right side of history. And any party who deviates from the PDM's narrative will be in loss in the long term. Now, this should not have happened, and the only problem is that if PDM makes a decision, if it is not followed, then we cannot move further anyway. We cannot move forward anyway. So the decisions have to be followed, which are taken at the platform of PDM. We followed them, and we are still following them. And if People's Party wants something to happen, it should, give its stance in the platform of PDM. And if PDM makes a decision, whether it is with the People's Party decision or not, they should follow it. So this has to be settled. So this is the issue. And on PTI being the federal party and PMLN being restricted to Punjab and People's Party being restricted to only the Sindh province, I disagree. You saw the by-elections while PTI was in power in KPK, they were in power in the center, yet they lost.
Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Kamran Murtaza, who's leader JUIFG. Kamran Sahab, do you, I don't know if you were hearing or not, Rana Ihsan was saying that the real rift is because the PPP did not consult the PDM on bringing, they should have brought Giuliani Sahab through the platform of the PDM, which did not happen. Do you think that there is a chance that rift can be mended? Because, it doesn't seem like there's any room left for all these parties to band together anymore. I don't think his call is dropped. Ji, Rana Sahab, can you hear me?
Should be made, and it is better if People's Party complies with the decisions of PDM. I think that is the only way forward. When there is a majority decision, even if you are in disagreement with it, it should be followed. That is the only way.
How does this work for the PDM at this point? If the PPP decides to part ways, which is what it seems like for all intents and purposes, where does that leave PDM? That's my question. Do you think that you will be effective as an opposition, leaving the right side of history argument aside? Let's leave that for a minute. Do you think that you will be effective as an opposition anymore?
Well, moving forward, I think minus People's Party, the PDM platform will have to decide if resignations will make an impact. Will it make the governments fall or not? And if not, I think that would not be an option. So obviously we will have to rethink how to move forward against this government, but we make no there should be no confusion about the fact that
I have Kamran Murtaza online again. Let me go to him. I will come back to you. Ji, Kamran Sahab, I hope that you can hear me now.
Yes.
Do you think that there is any chance that argument which Rana Sahab is talking about, the fact that Giuliani Sahab should have been brought through the platform of PDM, there is any chance that can be salvaged at this point? Because things seem to be at a dead end at this time with the PDM and the PPP, PMLN particularly.
BBC, there are some understandings between two major parties of the PDM, that is Pakistan Muslim Union and Pakistan Party. We are trying to resolve it, but before 6th of this month, when we have a meeting of JUI, I cannot say anything anymore on the subjects. We are withholding our views till the matter is resolved in our high power meeting.
You think that there is you're saying that you're going to withhold your views till the 6th. But the
till
the press conference today, when Bilawal Bhutto Zardari said that the CEC will be postponed, do you think that these are you seeing them as delaying tactics, or do you think that there is, like I said, that there will be, PPP might reconsider, might decide to come back within the fold of the PDM?
Still, we have hope of good. That's why we are trying to resolve the issue between the two major parties. But let's wait till 6th of this month.
Right. Okay. I will come back to you. Please stay with us. Javed Sahab, how do you see this? Do you think that there is chance, when you say that what Bilawal Bhutto said, do you see it as independently, in your view, you see it as a delaying tactic? You think that there is a chance that there can be some sort of movement? Because we do know that with the PPP, with Zardari Sahab, he has, he pulls out things from the hat. He has a tendency of acting, out of character for whatever benefit he perceives. He's known as that kind of a politician.
Mahrukh, for me, it is a kind of a foregone conclusion that PDM is probably, it is the end of the PDM as far as the PDM which existed before this split came about. I think it was a very strange sounding argument that the split has come because of the issue of Mr. Gilani. I think people are looking towards Pakistan Democratic Movement to represent them, their issues, economy, and the pandemic issue, and the inflation, etc., etc. But look what has happened. They have not been able to resolve their own differences. And it's such a petty issue as far as PMLN is concerned. They believe that it was a very trivial issue. If it was so trivial, then why they made it a kind of a point of honor, and they decided to let the PDM implode.
And what Rana Sahab is saying about Gilani Sahab, that seems to be a follow-through of what happened, rather than a sole reason alone of what happened with the resignations. Isn't it true? Because that happened and then they decided to go and do it separately.
If you look at it through the Pakistani people's perspective, they would be looking towards the PDM as a democratic force, which is a responsible democratic movement, which is going to represent the aspirations of the people of Pakistan. But when you create the kind of a spectacle and you can't resolve your own issues, then you start fighting among themselves on such trivial issues, quote unquote. And you're talking about whether Pakistan People's Party is trying to delay or they are adopting delaying tactics. I think Pakistan People's Party does know that they will never decide in the favor of tendering resignation.
And it seems to have discredited the whole PDM rather than one particular...
Yes, and already I think Mahrukh, Pakistan Democratic Movements, other parties other than Pakistan People's Party, they have decided to form an independent opposition group.
I will come back to you.
So if they have decided to form the opposition independent group, then I think they have themselves decided that it's the final split.
Right, let me go to Taj Haider Sahab, who is Senator PPP. Haider Sahab, how, we've been talking about the press conference that Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, your leader, just held. We've been talking about the ramifications of this split. At this time, can you comment on the fact that is this, and now inevitable, or do you think there's any chance that you can salvage, the whole PDM, the PPP can decide to go forward? Do you think that this, the whole resignations issue can be thought of as, letting the government continue to criticize them, move on with the long march? Do you think that's a possibility?
I mean, it was the Pakistan People's Party which held the first all parties conference, and then as a result PDM was formed.
Right.
So we would be the last party to see PDM breaking, and that's why we are taking all the precautions. And I mean, we are keeping quiet. As a matter of fact, you must have read that Chairman Bilawal Bhutto stopped party leaders from giving replies to or saying something which may cause ill will on the part of other parties. So our aim remains to reconcile. But of course, the problem started when on the issue of resignations. It was our calculated judgment that resignations would help the government. And this was not a political view only. We took briefings from 4 noted lawyers on the constitutional and legal issues, and all these noted lawyers, Mr. Azaz Ehsan and Mr. Naik and Senator Raza Rabbani, everyone was of the opinion that if we leave the seats vacant, then in case by-elections are held, they'll have a total majority and 18th Amendment would be in danger. And then after that, we looked at the political side and we came to the conclusion that resignations would only help the government. And so resignations are not basic. The movement can go ahead without the resignation.
Right. Okay. Let me come back to you, Taj Sahab. I'm going to go with that to Rana Ehsan, who, Rana Sahab, I hope that you're following what Senator Taj is saying. He's saying that real issue has been resignations for the PPP, and the reason why things are where they are is because of resignations. Do you think that it is perhaps, like I said, it is perhaps unrealistic to expect the PPP to resign?
I think on the resignations, the decision stands that People's Party will decide in their CEC how to move about it, and then whatever decision they take will be brought back to the PDM.
But why is the rest of the PDM and the PMLN particularly, your leadership particularly, so adamant on having those resignations? Isn't another path for the PDM also to criticize the government on the issues, play the part of an opposition, let them continue, and see what their performance is till the next election? Why not go down that route? Why is that not feasible for the rest of the political parties, particularly the PMLN?
Mainly because we believe that any time that is given to PTI is the time which is where there is going to be a loss for Pakistan economically and otherwise as well. So we feel that this system, this hybrid regime, is not working, and the system has to fall down.
Okay.
And we have to come up with new rules of the game, how to go about it. So this is the narrative, and we feel that we could have taken the Punjab Assembly, but taking a stake of power in this system is not going to result into any improvement.
Right.
The point is that
I will come back to you. I'm going to go to Abbas Sabji. Senator, do you think that it is about the system, like Rana Ehsan Saab is saying? Do you think that it is perhaps, when you talk about the system, you talk about the way things are going, why is it so important for the opposition to have the resignations at this juncture in time, in your opinion, as being part of the government? Why do you think it's so important? Why are they not willing to wait? Why is this time so is it just a case of not having enough patience, or why do they think this time is so lucrative for them?
Actually, Senator Taj just said, giving resignation, obviously it's not my discretion to comment on it, but I think it is high time for the PDM to resign, and if they do resign really seriously, it will really suit us as a government. Because losing 85 seats in National Assembly by the Noon League and we going for re-election probably will gain more strength in National Assembly. It will help us to have more legislation on the way, which has been stuck just because of their stubborn behaviors. Now, as far as the economic conditions and the strength of the government is concerned, I would rather comment the kind of things they have in Sindh with the People's Party, or the kind of things they did in the previous 5 years when Noon League government was there. Seriously, the kind of damage they did to the economy, it took a long toll. It took a long road for us to recover from the economy. The day we got hold of the government back in 2018, if you look at the economic figures, with having $20 billion loss of the deficit loss in trade deficit and current account, with losing all those reserves out there, with $2 billion we had in the reserves, coming to $20 billion today, bringing back the economy to that level where it is standing today, with having foreign remittance of $2 billion per month, exports, textile exports of $10 billion in the...
Right.
We brought 2% to today. So it's been tough for us from the day they left the government, and we have been working very hard on this one. But things do take time, and I understand translating all those macroeconomic policies to the microeconomic level, where it really affects the people down there or the masses down there on the ground. It will take some time, but inshallah things will better soon. But I can assure you, the kind of their agenda, which is very irrational, which is very illogical, and that alliance they had from all those 9 or 10 or I don't know how many political parties they have, that is not for the betterment of Pakistan or the Pakistani people. It is for the power grab, for the power control. It is to come back to Islamabad. Nothing more than that.
Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Kamran Murtaza ji. Kamran sir, do you think that it is a possibility for the PDM to, do you think you will do the long march? Because that has been said before. Is there confirmation on the fact that if the PPP does decide to part ways from the PDM, you will still continue your long march? And do you think that it will be effective? Kamran Saab, can you hear me? No, he can't. Taj Saab, the same question from you. Do you think that you will, regardless of your issue on resignations, regardless of the issue of, leader of the opposition, do you think there's a chance that you will have the long march with the PDM?
As a matter of fact, we were not the ones who cancelled the long march. If you ask me, I've been on different positions in my party. Whenever a program is announced, its cancellation gives a wrong message to those who want to participate in that program. At times we have to cancel some programs, but we should always give a new date on which the program will be resumed again. But just arbitrarily really saying that the long march is cancelled has really hurt, and all our preparations, I don't know about the Punjab party so much, but I believe the Punjab party had also made lots of preparations for the long march, but I know about Sindh. Every division, every district, every tehsil was preparing for the long march, but all of a sudden we came to know that the long march had been cancelled, and that was a setback for everyone. And just because we had a different opinion on resignation. I mean, my wife told me...
My question, I mean, for this, at the sake of repeating myself, because this really does, puzzle me. Because, we've been hearing analysts, we've been hearing this on TV shows again and again since the PDM started this alliance, that, well, look, and even on my show we've had this discussion numerous times about how the stakes for the PPP, the PMLN are very different, and that this will happen, that there will be a time when these political parties will part ways on the issue of resignation, because of course for the PPP to forego a whole province at this time doesn't seem like, like a politically savvy decision to make. Why do you think that it was not anticipated by the PDM, it was not anticipated by the PPP, or were you not expecting the PMLN and the other PDM members to stick to it? What went wrong?
I don't know what went wrong, but we held that position that resignations would not be fruitful, and we took that position, as I submitted, with very, very careful thinking and taking constitutional and legal briefings on the point, as well as political briefing. But the problem is so simple to understand. My wife said that you can't stand outside the boundary line and hope to win the match. So it's really so simple. Why do you leave the field open? Why do you abdicate a platform on which you can be very vocal and on which, I mean, the real objective was that the interference of establishment in the electoral process should end. And we were having a lot of success on that, and we saw in the by-elections that the interference of the establishment was not there. Election Commission of Pakistan was holding free and fair elections without accepting any pressure, if there was any pressure put on them. The judiciary was working very independently. So all these conditions were conducive to the strengthening of the democratic system. And it's not understood why all of a sudden this demand came that everyone should resign, stand outside the boundary line and then hope that you are winning the match.
Right. Okay, let me come back to you. Javed, how do you see this whole scenario at this point?
Mahrukh, in my opinion, if PDM melts down, which seems to be the case, it is not a very favorable kind of a scenario for Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf as well.
How?
Because since now they have been talking about the kind of opposition they have, opposition is trying to derail the democracy and derail the sitting elected, legally elected government of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. But once this Pakistan Democratic Movement dissolves, what kind of argument they would be able to forward for their lack of satisfactory performance in governance and delivery of services? Because once PDM is gone, once a formidable opposition is no more there, rest of the tenure is going to be a huge challenge for Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf to deliver on the promises and the commitments they made with the people of Pakistan. And anything less than a sterling performance on part of PTI would not be accepted by the people of Pakistan. Because after 2.5 years, when they go to hustings in 2023, they will be sort of going to the people of Pakistan on the basis of their performance in governance. Right now, I think the economy is in shambles. We know how the finance minister was removed and why he was removed, because of the inflation and all that. It was stated by the spokesperson of the government, Mr. Senator Shibli Faraz. So I think it is a kind of a dual challenge for Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. If PDM stays there, they would have been able to forward an argument that, well, we were not able to deliver because we were not allowed by the opposition, which sort of tried to derail democracy and the long marches and protest demonstrations and resignation politics, etc. Once this formidable opposition is evaporated, I think then Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf would be left. Absolutely. And I think that would be kind of a huge challenge for them as well, because the time is very limited now. It's, I think, about two and a half years
left now. Senator, on Bappi Saab, how do you see the situation? Do you think that it is possible? I mean, we saw how certainly when Javed Saab talks about, the way the parliament, the way the cabinet has been reshuffled, a lot of blame being thrown to the finance minister. There has been criticism on the fact that, of course, he was acting on the behest of somebody's orders. All of that, do you think that the government will be able to get their own house in order? Of course, these distractions will disappear. That's a fair point if the PDM ceases to exist.
I think this is high time for the PDM to decide, to let us perform as well. See, there are only hardly 2 more years to go for an election year. I mean, 2023 is coming just around the corner as well. And when we go into the election, it will be our performance that will be judged by the people of Pakistan. Let them judge us on a performance. If they really think, my honorable colleagues from the PDM really think that PTI government is not doing well, let the people of Pakistan decide on that merit issues. I mean, you can't really force us to, just for your power grabbing tactic and for your own personal agendas, for accountability and everything, you start, hustling us with this, slogans of leaving the government. That won't really work for us. As far as Jadoon Sahab just said, this is all a discretion of the Prime Minister. He reshuffles his cabinet, he brings in the people who think are more able, and our house is in order, our team is intact. I don't really agree why Hafiz Sheikh Sahab was removed. because it was entirely because of the Islamabad High Court decision. Shibli Saab was just taken aback because, at one point in time somebody just asked a question, but that was not really the case. V. Sheikh Saab was just removed because of that, the one ordered by the Islamabad High Court, where he has to do before the June. He cannot really head the ECC committee. The finance minister has to be elected, either a senator or the MNA. So that was the only reason he was removed.
So you're satisfied with his performance as a finance minister? You think that he was doing a stellar job?
I think he did really well. In the last 2 years, our macroeconomic figures have really improved. Our whole, the picture of the economy really looks cool. What I really want to explain to you that, when you translate the macroeconomic figures to the microeconomic level, where the commodities for the flour, for the wheat, for the oil, for the petroleum prices, these are the things when it takes a bit of a time. When you let the dollar slide from 105 rupees per dollar to 155 rupees, things had to be that way. Things had to be expensive. You cannot stop that inflation to,
But do you think that inflation will come down? Because we're looking at Ramadan right around the corner. We're still seeing the prices rise. Do you think that the government will be able to have a significant reduction in prices?
What we need to see is two things. Dollar has been coming down from 165 to 153 right now. Things are improving. Internationally, the prices of quite a lot of things are not in our control. I will just give you a comparison of a few things. If you look at the oil prices, the international Brent crude prices, they went up from $47 per barrel from January 1st. As on today, they stand at $67. That is 35% rise in international prices. If you look at the RBD palm oil that is used to make ghee and cooking oil, the prices of the RBD palm oil last year, ex-works was $550 per metric ton, which stands at $1032 as on today. So it's 100% rise on all those commodities which are beyond our control. Not having enough money to subsidize these products for people of Pakistan, that is an issue because we were given the sort of kitty for us to serve those people was not much enough. But we are working ourselves, and inshallah, sooner you see that change coming for the people of Pakistan who have really wanted to see that change coming up for them in the shape of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and Prime Minister Imran Khan.
Right. Okay. Rana Sahab, do you think that when if the PDM doesn't follow through, if the rift continues and it breaks down, what was the PMLN? What are some of the other steps that your party is contemplating? Will you move forward regardless? Are there any plans of, going solo? What do you expect? Or, of course, resignations from the parliament? What's your status as a political party on this?
Obviously, whatever decision PDM takes is going to be constitutional, and I think in the next, if that scenario comes, the platform of PDM will sit and decide how to go about it. But I think the challenges for PTI are not going to go away. The World Bank report just came and they're predicting that this year the GDP is going to grow at 1.3%. Next year they're predicting it at 2%, which means that there's going to be zero generation of employment. Whereas our population growth rate is 2.5%, so there's going to be negative employment. Jobs are going to go away. Inflation, they predicted 9% this year, they predicted 7% next year. So I think things are not easier for tax collection. It's the third year and PTI has just increased tax collection by 10% in the last 3 years, which is, I think, probably the most abysmal performance in the last 73 years. So I don't think that economically we're going any further, and that is why it is so important that we get rid of this incompetent government, because if we get stuck in this low growth cycle,
will you the PMLN resign? My question is, leaving aside the PDM, you're saying, of course, whatever the PDM decides, but the PMLN has been very clear about their stance, your leadership, Mariam Nawaz, we saw Nawaz Sharif Saab also, there is clarity, according to what we saw, that there is, on resignations. So will the PMLN follow through? Is there any indication that, the PMLN will resign?
We will only follow through on resignation if the system ends because of it. If we feel that the system is not going to collapse from our resignations, we will not resign, because the end goal is to make this government fall. If that does not happen with our resignation,
So
we will not do it.
So what I understand is if the PPP does not resign, which is what it seems to, where we are at this point, then the PMLN will not resign. That seems to be the situation. And the long march is also cancelled. So if the long march is also cancelled, there is no resignation, then the PMLN, how does the PMLN have a plan? Are they going to sit in the parliament and criticize the government, or things are just at a dead end for you?
Of course, I mean, if the long march gets cancelled and the resignation plans get cancelled, then obviously it's going to be the parliament which is going to be the forum for protesting against this government and highlighting their incompetence. So obviously that road will be decided when we get onto it. The path will be decided when we get onto that road.
Mahrukh, I need to respond to the figure what actually just said.
Please.
Yeah. He just quoted that the economy is projected to rise at 1.3% this year. No, that's not the case at all. As on today, the economy stands at 1.5%, and we predict our economy. Just let me finish it. We predict that economy will, at 30th June 2021, will finish at 3%, and we predict to grow at 4.5% next economic year. This, despite of the COVID issues we had in this economy. Number one. Number two, in the last 8 months, we had the highest tax collection by the FVR that stands at 333.80 billion rupees. From July 20 up till March 30th, which is the highest tax rate for the last 3 years. And rest assured that if the inflation starts at 9% today, we predict it to come to 5% next year because of the oil prices and the things which will be going down. So let me clarify all those figures he just quoted, ma'am.
Right, whatever the figures are, what the situation is. Right, Rana Sahab, I'll come back to you. Javed Sahab, whatever the situation is in terms of what the actual figures are of the economy, the point is for the voters, of course, it will matter what inflation is at, and what the prices are. The price hike, inflation is an issue that will really matter to them. And like I said, we are just looking at Ramzan around the corner, and until the government brings down prices significantly, there won't be relief for the people.
Absolutely. I think that's a huge challenge for the government. And inflation, the spike in prices of everyday, the consumption items of the consumption daily basis. I think if they don't do that, if they don't go for some kind of a mechanism to evolve and to control the price hike, it's going to definitely pose a serious challenge to the PTI government. And when they go to the people, I think they hardly have anything substantive other than the indicators, because indicators definitely in certain ways are positive, but how they could be translated into the benefit of the people of Pakistan and the common man, basically those who fall in the category of the middle class and lower middle classes.
Right. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for joining us, Javed Jadoon Sahab. On a pass, Bapi Sahab, thank you for being with us today. Rana Ehsan Afzal, thank you for joining us. Taj Haider, thank you for joining us. Kamran Murtaza, thank you for being with us today. As far as the issue of the PDM is concerned, regardless of where the joint alliance is at this time, it is time for the PML and the PPP, all the political parties, to perhaps reflect where it will leave them. Certainly the PPP does have sinned, but in terms of the future, they really need to have some sort of strategy of where they're going as political parties in terms of their opposition for the government. The government certainly seems to be confident. It seems to be rejoicing in an opposition that is so fragmented at this point. But the real challenge for the government, of course, remains controlling price hike, inflation, also dealing with the issues of governance which have plagued the government since the very beginning. And it is a crucial time. We will have to see how the government now performs, because 2.5 years later, of course, will be election year. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.